Good afternoon. I'm Elden Hawkes, Partnership and Innovation Specialist here at the Small Business Administration, and welcome to another exciting day of America's Seed Fund. As we begin, I hope you've taken advantage of all the exciting events from this week, including yesterday's agency open houses. Today, we're going to dive inside the minds of those who review your applications. We're going to pick their brains to see what works, what doesn't, and what can get you funded. To better help you understand what exactly goes on during the evaluation process, we have a panel of notable agency program managers that have years of experience in SBIR and STTR. To further illustrate exactly what happens during the evaluation process and what evaluators are looking for. So first off, I like you guys to introduce yourselves. I'll start with April. So introduce yourself, your agency, and what are or is the biggest misconception you hear about the SBIR STTR programs from applicants? I'll start with you, April.
Awesome. Thank you, Eldon. My name is April Richards, and I run EPA's SBIR program, the Environmental Protection Agency. And I have been doing that for many years. We are one of the small SBIR programs. So the beauty of that is that I kind of touch every proposal and every award and every part of the review process. So I do know it intimately. So happy to share that knowledge with you. The biggest misconception, I think I'll just take that question. I'll answer like a politician. I'll just say something I want to say, but that's not really an answer to your question. But for EPA, with the small program, and their other speakers kind of represent larger agencies, so I'll focus on the smaller agency perspective. We really care about technical merit. We really care about commercial potential, and we really care about impact to the topic area. So those are the three things that are the most important criteria that we're going to use when we look at your proposal that you submit to EPA.
Thank you, April, excuse me. Mina.
All right. Good morning, good afternoon, and thank you for having me. My name is Mina Khalil. I am the USSOCOM, SBIR, and STTR Program Manager. Biggest misconception about SBIR and SOCOM, there's a couple of mine. So the first one is called the Valley of Death. I believe there's, and not just me, there are others, and that was spoken by our acquisition executive in South Week a couple of weeks ago. There is no such thing as a valley of death. There are multiple valleys, and we got to cross through each one of them. The idea is, if we need your requirement, if we need your technology to fulfill our requirements, we will guide you to get through each one of those valleys, to the mass production level. But you always have to work with us and meeting our requirements. The other one is you have to know somebody in the government for you to get an SBIR award. Not true. I think 83% or so of SOCOM's SBIR has been with non-traditional small businesses, names that we never heard before. And those are the ones that never received any kind of a SOCOM SBIR or SOCOM award in the past. And those are the ones that we look for. We want to make sure this is a seed fund for America's small businesses.
Thank you, Mina. Now let's blast off to outer space with Quenton.
I'm also excited to participate in another session with SBIR and the small businesses on the line. I run NASA IGNITE's SBIR program, so we have a brand new program that's more commercialization focused. We look for firms that's looking to commercialize their technologies. I've also, as Eldon also mentioned, I worked in the mainline SBIR solicitation for many years, for several years, and so I have a lot of knowledge in both of these different programs. I think it's so many different misconceptions. You ask a really good question, Eldon. I think one misconception is that you have to write to the maximum page count. So we give a maximum page count for our phase 1 and phase 2s, and we see a lot of firms writing to that. That can actually hurt you because there's so much fluff in your application. What I recommend, look at whether it's, I'm not as familiar with the other agency programs, but look at what they're asking for in the solicitation. For us, we have subtopics and scopes. Look at the subtopics, look at the scopes. What are we asking for, and be extremely responsive to that. I think that I'll leave it there for misconceptions.
Thank you, Quentin. And I think that's a very good segue into our next topic. And I will say this, Quentin, you make a very good point as far as you want to make sure you are as specific and detailed and direct as possible with your proposal. If it's 10 pages, 12 pages, don't just write 10, 12 pages just because.
Yes.
Of course, don't submit two either. So with
tell
that,
your story. Tell your story, talk about why you can be responsible. So, I guess what myself and Elden are saying, don't look at the solicitation from a robotic standpoint. Look at it as you want to tell a story and how you can meet that need.
Exactly. And that's a very good point. And before we get to the evaluator process, we got to talk about preparation, proposal preparation, and that page count and writing to what the solicitation asks for is very important. And April, I'll start with you. With EPA and even SBIR in general, are there roadmaps or checklists that can help applicants navigate through the technical requirements?
Yes. There are a few things you have to do to submit a proposal to the federal government, right? This is a non-dilutive investment. It's great. You don't have to pay it back. It's got so many pluses, but it is the federal government. So there are a few things you have to do. So you have to start early. Definitely start early. Look at what registrations are required, right? Do you need a SAM registration? Is it a contracting agency? You have to register with SBA. You have to have a DUNS number or UEI, these new numbers. And then for us, you have to register with our application system. So yes, I will say for EPA, yes, we have added a checklist and absolutely use that. It's exactly what our contracting officer will use when he looks at proposals. We do like a responsiveness review when they come in to make sure like they don't exceed the page limit, that the budget is not over what we can allow. So you check off everything on that checklist. That's exactly what our contracting officer will use to get you through that gate. So we are really hoping that that is helpful to small businesses to navigate all the many requirements that there are.
Thank you, April. Mina, is there a checklist for applying to the Army or SOCOM, excuse me?
Yeah, so for SOCOM, we do have our instructions, and I do see at times that some may not read the instructions and they submit based on their knowledge. The instructions that we have for SOCOM under the DoD, within the DoD, Defense SBIR or Defense SBIR STTR.mil, we give an exact list of everything that we require, how you be evaluated based on, and what we use it for. So please read that very diligently. Don't just scroll through it and press agree as we do to your iPhone or Android user agreement, right? And we made it very, very clear, very, very structured. So please use that in building your own checklist or building your own matrix to make sure that your requirements, make sure it meets all the requirements. We get a small percentage of companies or proposals that do not meet those first checks. This is the first gateway. And it is one too many. It's one too many that you put too much effort into that we will unfortunately not be able to proceed forward with or evaluate technically just because it does not meet those requirements.
And I was Mina. Quentin, is there a checklist or anything like that for NASA?
Yeah, exactly. So I'm going to talk about, again, I'm talking about two different programs, right? I'm talking about the SBIR mainline solicitation and SBIR IGNITE solicitation. Just as my colleague April said, if you open up our solicitation, it's clear as Elden just mentioned, it's a checklist and it lists all of the different forms. I'm specifying the two solicitations because with our mainline solicitation and IGNITE, we're about to switch to a different platform. Our old platform, EHB, some of the things in the checklist wouldn't let you go to the next step until you fill those forms in. But a quick tip, make sure that whatever you fill in is relevant. We've seen people fill in information from a previous proposal. We know sometimes you repurpose things. So make sure what we're asking for, that's even if it's electronic, that's exactly the field that you're filling in. So go back and check, even though it's electronics. For SBIR IGNITE, this year, we also have a checklist, but it's going to be semi-automated. So some of the information that you're going to submit it electronically. Some of it, you may have to upload a form, but most of it is going to be electronic. But yes, both solicitations clearly lay out everything and make sure if we tell you this is the PDF form. So for Ignite, we're going to say, hey, here's a list of PDF forms to fill out. And here are a list of forms, things that you may have. Make sure you have that. One more thing is that most agencies are adding this kind of like foreign ties, foreign national background checks. You will see that in our solicitations for SBIR. And we ask you to fill out that form because I know some firms have applied before and it may be new to them. Make sure that you don't miss that one.
Thank you, Quenton. I'm going to stay with you for this one. Now, this program is all about innovation. And, all four of us have been in the program for years now. We've seen that shift as far as what is innovative and what isn't. Partially that's because just technology changes, but more importantly, the needs of the agencies change from year to year. People or agencies looking for something different and what they need and what their needs are. So how does one in their application adequately address innovation in their proposal? I'll start with you, Quenton.
Yeah, that is an excellent question. And I was hoping someone would ask that because, this is called inside the head of the evaluator. Well, I'm going to take a second and get inside the head of the proposers, okay? And I'm going to answer the question a roundabout way. If you take a picture, proposers, who is the first person that you're going to look at in that picture? Yourself, right? That's the first person you're going to look at it. So from a NASA perspective, if the picture was taken, look at it as if you were NASA. And what is NASA working on at the time? Obviously, we're working on Artemis. We're working on Moon and Mars. Everybody knows that. However, in our solicitations, we have subtopics and we have scopes. Look at our scopes. We update them every year, just like Elden mentioned, according to how technology changes, according to what the agency needs, and be very responsive to those scopes. I don't know, I probably talked to this before, like I've written tons of proposals. I started writing proposals in graduate school. I didn't have the best GPA, so I had to write these proposals to go to grad school. I eventually got really good at it. And one of the things that when I was not winning these awards, I realized that sometimes I was trying to take what I was doing and stretch it a little bit because I wanted to go after all these different opportunities. Yeah, I really needed the money. I didn't have scholarships eventually I got scholarships because my grades were good, but I was trying to stretch. I was trying to make something fit where it didn't fit. Whereas these organizations, NASA included, I've been rejected for NASA awards. All pretty much most agencies I've written proposals for as a grad student. So that's kind of my advice, is that make sure your technology is a good fit and don't try to stretch it.
Thank you, Quenton. April, how does one define innovation for the EPA?
Okay, yeah, sorry again, Eldon. I really want to talk about the other topic that Quenton was building on, just responsiveness, especially for EPA, for Environmental Protection Agency, small agency. We have fairly specific topics and limited topics every year because we just don't have that much money in our SBIR budget. So we're really looking for proposals that are responsive to those topics. So just like Quenton said, we really want something that's going to help us solve those problems that we identified. Our mission is to protect human health and the environment on this planet. We're worried about this planet. Quentin's going to get us to some other planets, but we're thinking about Earth. And so we really, EPA, two of the reviews that you get are going to be EPA people. So if you can convey that enthusiasm and impact to environmental protection through your proposal, that is really going to be a big plus in getting reviewers excited about your innovation.
April, let me ask you a question based on this. Sure. So would it be safe to assume that being, or specificity and being very specific to what's being asked for is a very good way to convey the innovation of what someone's proposing to EPA?
I think that's true. We definitely kind of know what we're looking for. We know what the problems are. Let's say we always try to define the problem. You give us the technology solution. We're not telling you what technology, but we've got air quality issues. We've got water quality issues. You help us solve those. And And even just more process-wise, like we evaluate for innovation and IP through our commercial review in phase 1. So we're really looking to see that you have thought about intellectual property and how you might protect that, like just to dive into the IP side a little bit.
Okay.
So I'll leave it at that for now.
All right. Thank you, April.
Mhm.
Mina, could you talk about how someone demonstrates their innovation or the innovativeness of their technology to SOCOM?
Yeah, absolutely. The innovation for SOCOM should not be that hard because we take right out of our requirements and develop those topics that we put out. And because of that, we want to see a solution to what our requirements are. We want your technical team to write that proposal. We have a very good, solid technical SMEs that are able to evaluate this and see exactly how you guys are developing the work. So stay away from the fluff. Fluff is good, not so much, right? Just kind of minimize it. We want to see your technical aspect. How are you going to solve the problem? How are you going to deliver that prototype? What is your end goal there? How are you going to commercialize it? What, your technical merit, your team members, who's going to work on it, and the resumes, because we do evaluate based on technical merit, on personnel, on a commercialization plan. We want to see you successful, and we want to see your tool in the hands of our operators. So that's the innovative part. Now, that said, maybe there are some aspects in that one pager that may not be that clear. We have virtual Q&As for every single topic that BAA that we have out. Please join in, ask the question, start early, ask for the questions. Don't come in the last minute and propose something that is entirely fluff or missing information, or usually a part of the solution doesn't cut it. Usually we want to see a full solution to what we have, but please demonstrate it through your technical merit of your ability to do so.
Mina, you and April both brought up the process. So let's jump ahead just a little bit and I'll come back to another key part of that, which is going to come up in this. So you talk about the review process. What is SOCOM's review process and what are reviewers specifically looking for when they review applications? Yeah,
so from the SOCOM side, in our review process, again, it starts with the responsiveness part. Make sure that we have everything that we already discussed that, and then it comes to the technical team. And technical team are the ones that authored the topic, so they know exactly what they're looking for and they know what the technology is all about. And that's when they start. That's when we start evaluating every single one to see do they actually have the people to do it. And is the requirement and technology that you guys are offering, is that going to meet what we're looking for? And then at the end, are you going to exist at the end of the SBIR phase 1 or phase 2? Or are you going to say, sorry, we are we locked ourselves up as a small business in a monopsony of SOCOM to the US government, and there's nothing else outside of that? And then looking at this whole picture, then they come up with, we come up with the final criteria of saying, here are the qualifications. At times, we do require in our specific topics 15 presentation slides to say, hey, we have 5 that qualify. We want to down select to 4 or 3. And then we have a 1-hour session where we have that discussion with the company and make sure that they are actually are able to answer some of our questions from the technical side. And that's when we make our final selection. We don't do our selection based on a set number of phase 1s and a set number of phase 2. It's more of who can actually do it technically, who has the right people, who can commercialize, and then based on that we can make a decision of how many we need to do. We just want the qualified ones.
Right. Now, Mina, and I don't know if I missed this, but who are your reviewers? Are they come from the outside or are they internal to SOCOM itself?
They are all internal to SOCOM. So our topic authors are the ones are from the program offices, and the program offices are the ones that are asking for the technology. And then obviously them, as we have a lead evaluator, and then the team itself. The team itself could be members of the operators, the users themselves. It could be support contractors. It could be SME of some sort, and they have that team put together in order for them to do it. They could be from the program office or from our SOCOM components, depending on who has the need for. At the end, there is a small for phase twos, we do require an acquisition plan, a transition agreement to be signed between the program executive officer or the funding office and our S&T director and SES to say that there's a transition plan for a phase 3 for that. So everything is lined up directly to say we're going to transition, and that's why SOCOM is one of the best in the U.S. government in transition rate from phase 2 to phase 3, or from a SBIR phase 1, phase 2 to a phase 3.
Now, before I jump to April, because you said something at the very end, could you explain to them what do you mean from transition from a phase 2 to a phase 3? Because some people may not understand exactly what you're saying there.
Yeah, so a phase 1 is a concept, right? You're writing a study, you're doing a study, you're saying how you're going to take this low technology readiness level, this concept, and you're going to build it as a prototype, and everything that's a research in between. And that usually is about 6 to 7 months period of performance. Again, it depends on the agency, it depends on the DoD component. And then out of those, we do select, or generally the SBIR program office would select the phase 2. The phase 2 for prototyping. So that's the prototyping phase. And it can go anywhere from 8 months to 24 months, even longer. Depends on the how new kind of cutting edge technology and the ability and the feasibility of doing so. When we finally go through those phase 1s and phase 2s for SBIR, which is funded by the SBIR STTR dollars with limitation that is set by SBA, then the program offices or commercialization picks up, and that's when you have no unlimited contracting ability. You're able to commercialize it in the market. You have no cap on how much funding you get. And I've seen companies that started off with $150,000 phase 1, got about $1.25 million, $1 million or so phase 2, and then boom, they got a $49 million indefinite or contract over the next few years. To go ahead and fund more. So that's the phase 3. That's your success. That's right. You putting this stuff out, and that's what growth. That's the growth that will take you from a small business to something to what Qualcomm is now, because Qualcomm was a phase. It was a SBIR awardee back in the 1980s, and look where they are now.
Exactly. And all of our devices. So I thank you, Mina, for saying that, because we got a question from the audience about using the technology. And just to sort of reiterate, we have granting agencies as well as contracting agencies. And one of the things you'll see as we go back and forth, the evaluation processes are different. But more importantly, contracting agencies, there is that option for that phase 3, that commercialization where you get their social contract. Many times, granting agencies, they don't typically purchase the technology once it is created, because that's not their goal. Their goal is to advance in their research efforts, not so much to fund a product to be commercialized for their needs. And that's something you're going to see as we go back and forth amongst the agencies. And I hope you learned yesterday at a lot of the open houses as well. But I'm going to jump to April. April, could you talk to us? Because you gave us a little bit of a snippet about your review process. Could you talk to us about the review process and who the reviewers are for EPA?
Yes, I would love to talk about my review process. And actually, I love to just watch Jack interpret our review process. I've never seen it look so amazing. Interesting. Yeah, so for EPA, again, we are only the proposal. So like Mina was mentioning, like they have a pitch or slides or an interview. For us, it's just a proposal. Small agency, we don't have the bandwidth to do that. So we're going to evaluate whatever you put in that proposal. So this is kind of obvious advice, but it's a good advice, is address all of the criteria in the solicitation, the evaluation criteria. They're laid out. You're going to get a score on each one. And the higher your score, the more likely you're going to be in that pool of being considered for funding. So this is speaking for EPA. So you really, maybe some criteria, you're really like your team, your technical team is super strong. Maybe your commercial team is not quite as strong, but either way, you need to address all of those criteria and get the best score you can for each one. And that'll give you your cumulative score that hopefully puts you in that funding pool. For EPA, for both phase 1 and phase 2, we do contract out a commercial review. So there'll be some external person looking just at your commercialization criteria. And then it will be EPA experts, kind of like the military. It'll be like EPA experts looking at both the technical quality of the proposal and the relevancy to the topic, how much it addresses the topic and how much environmental impact it will have.
Okay. Thank you. Now, Quenton, could you tell us about the, I guess in this case, you have the IGNITE, SBIR IGNITE, as well as the mainline program. Could you talk about the review process for those, talk about similarities and differences?
Yeah, so for the mainline solicitation, similar to April's program, you're evaluated based on what's in the solicitation. The solicitation hasn't come out yet for PY24, so normally it's scientific and technical merit, and you can just find this right in the solicitation. It's I think it's scientific technical merit, it's experience and qualifications and facilities, effectiveness of your work plan, and it's also a commercialization score. Commercialization score is usually for phase one. We don't look at it as strongly because we know firms are still working on their commercialization plan. Our reviewer pool mainly comes from NASA subject matter experts. Again, I'm speaking in terms of the mainline solicitation. For the actual commercialization review aspect, again, phase one, not as much, but we want you to be thinking about it. Phase two, similar to Mina's program, phase two, we look at commercialization a little bit more because we want to, again, at phase two, we want you to be actually moving towards not just being dependent upon NASA awards and government agency awards. And so those commercialization reviewers sometimes come from within the agency, but we do contract them out as well. So we have a team of people within the agency. Sometimes I'm even called on to other programs that have a commercialization understanding. They have a business, they have some experience in business, but they also have some technical experience developing technology. We usually utilize them for the commercialization review. Now for IGNITE, we actually have a higher pool of commercialization reviewers. Sometimes they come from the agency, but most of the time, I would say 75% of the time, they're external. And these external reviewers could be investors. These external reviewers could be people that are in the technology or space and commercialization space. And the commercialization review starting at phase one for SBIR IGNITE is much higher than the mainline solicitation because it's more of a commercialization focus award. We also have NASA subject matter expert as reviewers for IGNITE. So for IGNITE, our review pool is made up of a lot of different people, but they're experts in the particular topic areas that we have, or they're commercialization experts or they're investors.
Thank you, Quenton. Now I'm going to stay with you for this next part because we have a question here that's very key to the evaluation process. Now, I will say, just from my experience, and I have been a program manager as well as a reviewer at SBIR during my previous tenure of my career. And one of the things that I've seen after reviewing proposals, after sitting on many review panels, is that the composition of the team that you have in place can be make or break. You can have the best technical proposal ever, but the composition of your team could really be whether or not you get funded. Could you talk about how important the team that you put together is for that proposal, particularly the PI?
Yeah, so this is a great point. And I mentioned, in the solicitation, again, the next year's solicitation hasn't come out for IGNITE or for mainline solicitation, but normally it's the experience, qualifications, and facilities section. In that experience, qualifications, and facilities section, we're trying to see, is your team capable of doing the work? And sometimes for small businesses, we know that you can't do everything, but that's where your partnerships come in, right? You can always partner with somebody who doesn't have the experience that you have, or they don't have the facilities. I know firms say, phase one is not a lot of money, but you really want to utilize your phase one to kind of get your foot in the door with these agencies, get in front of other people. The money is one thing, but you really want to use it for networking. So even if you have to give up some of your money to network and partner, make sure that team is strong, because just like Elden mentioned, that is a review criteria in our solicitation. Again, look at other agencies' solicitation, see what's in their solicitation. But for mainline solicitation and IGNITE, we both have that experience, qualifications, and facilities. And we want to know, can they do the work, right? And that's going to be also reflected in the work plan. So, if you have the people, if we come back and look at your work plan and you're developing, I was a microwave engineer. We see that you're developing some instrument, but the person that you have as your PI has never done this before. We're automatically going to look at it and say they can't finish the work. We want you all to be successful. So the PI, it's very important. And I made that point because some people always say, well, if I don't have a PhD, that's why I didn't get awarded. But that's not the case. If doesn't matter your level of education, what have you done and have you shown that you can develop the technology? Even with a master's degree, if you have tons of publications on Google Scholar or you have some prior history, you've been working in the industry, you've been developing these instruments. Again, I was a microwave engineer. You've been developing these instruments for this agency, for this company. We're not going to just say, oh, they don't have a PhD. We're going to look at, can you do the work?
Thank you. Now, I was going to ask that PhD question because that is a question that comes up all the time as far as a PI is concerned. Do I need a PhD? Do I need a PhD? April, I'm going to shift to you. Talk to us about what EPA looks for when it comes to the composition of a team for a proposal.
Yeah, definitely. So again, we have those fairly specific criteria, and we have one criterion that is the team being evaluated from a technical standpoint. And then we have another criterion that's the team being evaluated from a business standpoint, like can they take this technology to market? So we actually kind of evaluate it twice from different perspectives. So it is important, but we have other criteria that are important too. Like, do you have a plan to take it to market? Is it innovative? Is it responsive to our topic? So they're all weighed in there, and the weight is in the solicitation. So there is a balance. So I think the PI is important, but I don't think it's do or die. We do not care if you have a PhD, as long as you have expertise, experience, bringing something to the table. And actually talking about experience and expertise, I do want to say something that I was thinking about earlier. Like, we really do want new companies in the program too. Like, we really are trying to get startups and companies that are new to SBIR. So you don't have to have this enormous track record either. Like, either you can have a track record, or you can tell us your plan to get it to market. You have a good plan. This is how we're going to do it. This is who we're going to subcontract to. Like Quenton said, this is who we're going to partner with to fill any gaps that you might have. Because we fund a lot of like 2-person companies, 5-person companies, and we want that. You just got to demonstrate as best you can in your proposal how you're going to do what you said you're going to do in 6 months for $100,000.
Exactly. That's a really great way of putting
it.
Mina, how about you? Talk about SOCOM and what they're looking for within the composition of a team.
All right. So the composition of a team is a team that can do the work with the right experience and the ability to produce. So we don't usually say, hey, shall have a PhD, and if we do require a PhD, chances are we'll put that in the instructions and put that clearly in there. But we never actually did that, or not in my tenure, not in my time. The structure of the team can be, and I'm kind of echoing what April just mentioned. The technical team is important, the scientists behind it, who's going to do the work, who's going to do the business aspect of it. And again, who remembers the 3 parts of SOCOM, how SOCOM evaluates the technical merit, the personnel, and the commercialization plan. So putting a solid commercialization plan tells us exactly where you're going to go after the phase 1, or maybe between the phase 1 and the phase 2, or after the phase 2, or how else are you going to grow outside of the scope of just SOCOM or just DoD or just the U.S. government outside of that.
Thank you, Mina. I want to make this point to everyone to give you an actual real world representation of everything they said based on my experiences. When I reviewed before, and I remember there's one proposal I reviewed, they had great technology. The technology is really good. I start looking at the background of the team, and they talked about, at this point, it was about, this is 5-6 years ago, using cloud technologies. No one on the team had any sort of expertise or understanding in either using Azure, AWS, any sort of the major cloud technology that were there, and didn't demonstrate that in their body of work. You can't say you're going to do something or able to do something but you don't demonstrate in your team that your team has capacity to actually deal with the technology and make it work. And that's, a very specific example that I remember because it always stuck out with me. So you want to make sure you demonstrate that your team has the credentials and capacity to do the work. So it's not just if they have a PhD, it's like, can they do the work? And are you demonstrating that in your proposal? Now, one of the things I wanted to ask about, and I'll start with April because this came up when you were talking, April, particularly with commercialization. I'm looking at phase one. We know that phase two, it's a very big part of the application process and the review process. How big is commercialization in phase one for EPA?
It's a third. We literally have a third. So it's we have a third for commercialization, a third for technical, and a third for responsive. So it is important. I don't know. My philosophy is we're a small program. We need to get thinking about commercialization right off the bat. You can't just love your technology and think it's going to be great. We need to know who's going to use it. Maybe you've done some customer discovery, some thought about who the end user is or how you would get it to market. So it is pretty important for us.
Thank you. Quenton, I'll shift to you.
Yeah, so again, two programs, Mainline and Ignite. Mainline, we want you to be thinking about it. And so what that means is, I'll just pretty much echo everything Mira and April said. Do you have a plan? Have you thought about it? Have you started talking to customers? One of the things that I wanted to give firms a tip on this call, go through iCorps. Even if, we don't have one at our agency, just find the iCorps program to go through. That helps with your commercialization plan, and it actually helps you with your proposal because you start to develop something somebody needs, and more than likely the government may need it as well. With regards to Ignite, commercialization is huge. It's huge in the sense that we choose our topics to determine based on is there a commercial space or aerospace market, meaning that can you get commercial space customers from big companies, small companies, your Lockheeds, your Boeings, your Raytheons? Can you get follow-on investment? Are there investors? Like sometimes you don't have a technology that's ready to go to market yet, but you have some investors looking to invest in that technology right now. So, can this topic produce technologies that investors or other government agencies are going to want to utilize or invest in this technology, right? So all of these different things of commercialization, we choose our topics based on that. So obviously we choose our firms the same way. When we look at the application, we're looking at what is the total addressable market? What is the service addressable market? Meaning that, can you take this small part of the market? This kind of goes back to the evaluation as well, because we want to know, have you looked at your competitors, right? Anybody that started a business, just because you do something a different way doesn't mean that we're going to buy your technology. What is your key enabling technology? So this kind of goes back to your question about evaluation, Elden. So a few things that I look for, different people look for different things, right? What is the current state of the art? Do you improve upon the current state of the art from a technical perspective? And does your improvement on the current state of the art really address a NASA need? That same technical aspect of current state of the art, do you improve upon it? You can apply it to the commercialization section, right? Like, what is different about your technology? Will people purchase it, right? And what is different from your competitors? And so these are the types of things that we look for in the particular Ignite solicitation. Again, we also look at it in Mainline, but just not as much.
Thank you, Quenton. Mina, could you talk about that commercialization aspect, specifically in phase one, and how it's really looked upon and evaluated by your evaluators?
Yes, so let me make this clear. No one is safe from the inability to produce a very good technology. And in my previous positions capacity, I've had a major defense company that produced a technology, a system that can do exactly what we're looking for, just can't produce it. So thinking up front and saying from the phase one, when you're writing that study and saying your life, your company depends on, not your life, your company depends on your ability to produce that system, to commercialize that system is key to your success. Because then if you develop a software that cannot be, and I know a lot of people will say, a lot of companies would say, well, I do software that's easily produced. But if you produce a software that cannot be plugged for loopholes, cannot be protected from cybersecurity, then that system is not usable for us. If you develop a system that you cannot build you cannot build the production line for, you cannot produce, then that system cannot be used. And all of that starts in phase one. If you develop something with supply chain problems, supply chain risks, you've already developed a risky system that cannot be produced. All of that should start in phase one. You know, your ability to do this is a cutting edge technology. Well, how far ahead? There's a very good example in the past on what is it, the current bomber, I believe the B-20, B-21, I can't remember. And when they started building that upfront years and years ago, before software was able to manage the airplane with just wings, but they couldn't fly it because there was no software that can do it. And you know, when the time came and software is able to do it, then that's when that system, that the airplane was able to be built, and it became something very important in our military. Likewise, when you're building something and you have a technology that we're kind of 10 years ahead and not there yet, well, how are you going to commercialize that system? So keep that in mind as you're building the system. And then finally, and I'm losing my train of thought here. Finally, with your commercialization, think, and as Quenton mentioned and April mentioned, thinking of that dual use for your prototype. How are you going to sell this system to the government and sell the system outside of the government? What is the how are you going to commercialize it? In SOCOM, we actually we worked very closely with our partner intermediary, a non-for-profit called SoftWorks, and we've put together a small business bootcamp where we teach them a lot of how to be, you know, how to work with the government, etc. And it's free. And then as part of it, we brought investors, venture capitalists to sit in there and talk to the small businesses how they can utilize some of that funding outside. We either put some small business SBIR awardees in front of those in front of those panels and say, hey, pitch what you have and see how you can commercialize it outside. And it's very interesting how some of the weak points were that they couldn't commercialize their technology outside of the US government. And that is a concern.
Thank you, Mina. Now, I want everyone to really take stock in what everyone has said and really to understand how, even in a phase one, how important that commercialization piece is. You're going to have differences amongst all the agencies, but I've been in SBIR's TTR for the last 11 and a half years now. There has been a decided shift in the level of understanding a phase one organization needs to have about the potential commercialization of their product. That has become more and more across the board, regardless of the agency, something that is looked upon even more when it comes to that phase one. It's not just about, I have a great innovative product or service. It's about, can this be commercialized? And do you have an understanding, even in phase one, of how it can be applied? And I think Mina made a very good point with that, especially since they do contracts. You want to look at what's the government application, but also what's the application outside of the government as well, if there is one. So it's very good points. I want to go back to just the team aspect, because we had a very good question come from the audience, and we'll go a little bit further as time begins to run out. So we talk about the team, the composition of the team. Does the team that you propose have to be working on that proposal, or can you pretty much say this will be the team if you get funded? And I'll start with you, Mina, since we just finished.
So please restate the question. Are we talking about the size of the team, or?
Do you have to have the team in place at the time of proposal?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So this is a very good one, because we came across few of those in the past where a proposal came in and it had some solid technical aspects of it. And then it talked about the team size of so many. But then when we had, we had our questions. Obviously, when we read those proposals, we have the background, we have the technical background, we have the experience. We've had some further questions, and when we talked with the company was not the team that was mentioned. There was a company of one, and everybody else was, I'm looking for a hire of this. I have someone for this. I'll be working I'll be working on getting this if I get the proposal. And that is a concern. If it is a team of one, tell us it's a team of one. And it really depends on the kind of level of work that you're trying to, we're looking forward to see if that actually fits in within your team size. So we need to know all of the stuff up front, because that meets our second criteria in the evaluation of the personnel working on the proposal. They're not they will be that they are who they are now.
Okay. April, how about you? Does the team already have to be in place at the time of the application?
Yes, because we're basically evaluating what you put in the proposal. So yeah, we need to see who's on that team.
Okay. Okay. Quenton, same question.
Yeah, same as Mina and April. We have had situations where during the award, sometimes between the application and award, team members change. If you're awarded, there's a period called contract negotiation, and if team members change, you'll have to submit that, talk about that, or work that in the contract negotiation period. It's not guaranteed; it can be denied, because again, just like my colleague said, we evaluated your proposal based on that.
Right. Now, one more question about teams, and again, this is very good. It kind of goes back to the whole PhD question. We have a question from the audience. What would you suggest for an owner of a small business who does not have a background in technology that is created but has a strong team? Let me ask, does that question, does it come down to who you select as the PI, or is it really about the team, regardless of who the shepherd is for the project? And I'll start with you, Quenton.
Yeah, I think we're going to look at the overall experience of the team. I think for NASA's SBIR program, you really want your PI to be the technical person, and I think it makes sense, right? Because that's the person that's going to be interfacing with the Corps. We assign you a Corps contract officer representative, but that Corps is also a tech monitor. That person is going to be interfacing with the tech monitor. So we want that person to be like your engineering lead or something like that for NASA's program.
Got you. April, how about you?
Yeah, I don't have a lot to add there. Again, we're sort of looking holistically. We just want to balance that you've got the business side and the technical side covered. So I won't spend too much time on that. I think ditto.
Okay. Yeah. Mina.
All right. So good question. Our technical POC or core, as Quenton mentioned, is going to be the one interacting with your primary investigator. At several times, and I've seen and I've met with companies where the CEO is not necessarily the primary investigator, and rightfully so. We do have multiple contact information. We have a primary investigator and we have a corporate official. Primary investigator is the technical guy. That's the one that's going to do the work and the study and manage your team.
Okay, thank you, Mina. Now I have a question. You've submitted the application, you've been reviewed, you didn't get funded. Do you get feedback from the agency based on your decision? And I'll start with you, Mina.
Yes, and please take full advantage of that. Ours is elective. Other DoD components make this a standard thing. And thanks to our, if you're not familiar with the DSIP tool, or a DSIP website, it's DoD SBIR STTR.mil. That's where, what is it, $2 to $3 billion of DoD of SBIR out of the entire SBIR budget comes out of DoD. That's more than 50%, I believe. And that website, www.dodsbirsttr.mil, is where you certify who you are, small business, provide everything, and then you get to see all the topics, you get to ask questions about the topics, and you get to propose to those topics. And at the end, with the current progress of the development of that website or evolution of that website, now you can get your informal feedback or your feedback directly from that website. So you get to see those. For us in SOCOM, it's by request. About 70% of our proposals that do not get that are not selected do request that feedback, and please do so. I've had 4 or so small businesses present in Soft Week a couple of weeks ago and talk about their experiences, their successes, their challenges, and some of the things that they've said is, hey, don't just give up because you didn't get the very first SBIR proposals awarded. Keep going, and eventually you hit them. And how do you hit them? You get those feedbacks, because that's how you tailor and adjust your proposal to meet the criteria that we're looking for.
Thank you, Mina. April, what sort of feedback does EPA give?
Yeah, absolutely. Just what Mina said, we do provide feedback. You just have to request it. So absolutely take advantage, right? You're going to get expert feedback, free advice from our commercialization experts, from the EPA experts. So yes, it's a resource. And I will say, like, we don't fund everybody we want to fund. So just because you didn't get funded doesn't mean you don't have a good idea. It just means we did not have enough budget to get, maybe to your proposal or something. So I don't feel like I need to tell entrepreneurs that no doesn't mean no. Like, you should be persistent and keep, plugging away, get what you can, and then keep resubmitting. But definitely take advantage of the feedback.
Okay. Quenton, how about NASA?
So for both programs, we do give feedback, but with a caveat. Some proposals are screened for non-responsiveness, meaning that they were not responsive. And this goes back to the subtopic or the topic that you're writing to. Those don't get feedback, but the rest of the proposals get feedback. And I ditto everything my colleagues said. Take advantage of that feedback.
Okay. Now, I will say this from personal experience and what I've seen over the years when it comes to that feedback. Now, full disclosure, before my time at SBA, I was at the Department of Agriculture working with their SBIR program. And one of the things that I saw, and goes to all the points that they made, the feedback that's given, it's free advice. It's free critiques from individuals, whether it is internal to the agency who know exactly what they're looking for, or in cases like, say, USDA or the granting agencies, they're using external viewers where they are subject matter experts. And 9 times out of 10, when organizations, businesses, innovators utilize that free feedback, they come back with a stronger proposal the next year. And I can't say 50% of those that reapplied the following year were funded in my experience, but over almost 8 years there, I saw a very good number of those that reapplied and utilized that feedback, ultimately, whether it's year 2 or year 3, ultimately had a very good chance of at least not getting funded, or at least recommended for funding as well. So that free feedback can really go a long way between, you have a very mediocre proposal to having a proposal that is worthy of being funded and could really be something that the agency could use down the line as far as your technology is concerned. We're just about out of time. I'm sorry I didn't get to all the questions, but I'm going to start with April first. Could you give any last words of advice on giving a good impression with the proposal?
Yeah, I was just thinking about that. I think my biggest advice is kind of building on something we started with about how some people jam everything they can into the page limit. I would like step back and have someone else read your proposal, like make it readable and understandable. Sometimes you're looking through that and like, oh my God, look at all this data and all these facts. And I'm like, I have no idea what this technology is going to do. Like, I can't quite tell what the impact will be. So I would say maybe hand it to someone that's not too deep into it, and see if they can understand and convey that excitement and impact about what your technology can do.
Thank you, April. Mina, how about you?
I'm going to kind of end with the same way I started. Please read the instructions of what we're asking for. Please stay away from the fluff. We want to see the technical piece of it. We want to see how you're going to prototype, how are you going to develop that new technology, and we want to see you succeed. So that's my biggest piece of advice when it comes to writing and developing a proposal.
Quenton, how about you?
Yeah, I'm going to combine what both of my colleagues said. April struck a nerve because she reminded me of the first time I won a NASA award. So before I worked for NASA, remember, I was writing proposals for graduate school and all these different things. my first, and this is like coming from double-digit rejection. So I had written tons of proposals. I started to get kind of good at it, but I had never won a NASA proposal. Just like April said, take it to somebody else. I took it to a guy in my department. I was in grad school, so I was much younger, so we called him Shake Daddy. His name was Dr. Shaker Banzali. He had not seen my proposal. I took it to him, and he looked at it, and this is so awesome. He looked at, he said, okay, what are the requirements in the solicitation? Same thing Mina is saying. He looked at the requirements in the solicitation. He took my proposal, and he made all of my headings the requirements in the solicitation. So if it was an SBIR solicitation, experience qualification, scientific technical merit, facility work plan, right? And if it was IGNITE, commercialization. He took it and he made those the sections. I didn't have to change much because I had the material, and that was my first NASA award. And from that point on, that will also answer your question, Elden. What would be a tip? From that point on, that's how I started writing proposals. You look at what they're asking for. Go. I'm not saying leave anything out. And let me put the precursor that this is not mandatory. This is just a tip. You can take the advice or not. But set up your sections with what's in the evaluation criteria, because the reviewers, this is inside the head of reviewers, we're looking for what do we ask you for in the solicitation for the evaluation criteria. So if you make it easy, we can go and see, do you have it? Now, doesn't guarantee you're going to win, because especially for NASA, it's super competitive. So this goes back again to what Mina said, is that can you be super responsive, right? Another tip that I want to give firms that I already gave you is get into the I-Corps program, if you can, before the solicitation. Another tip, we have a period that we don't have an open solicitation. We're not in blackout. Reach out to people at the different agencies. I can't really speak for EPA and I can't speak for SOCOM, but for NASA, I think everybody does it. You could ask them, hey, can I speak to a subject matter expert? Send a little blurb. Don't sell it. Don't send me a sale page saying, we can develop this. But, talk about a little bit about, again, what's the key enabler? Like, what can you do different? How did it help NASA science? No more than a few sentences. And we'll try to connect you with a subject matter expert. So those would be the tips that I would give for firms that's applying.
Thank you, Quenton. Now, Quenton, can you let everybody know the best place to contact you, email, website, all the details?
You're muted, Quenton.
All right, sorry about that. I live by a metro, so it was kind of loud. But just look at our website, sbir.nasa.gov, and just Google NASA's SBIR program. Again, I'm not the program manager for the mainline solicitation. That's Dina Salazar, and you can reach out to. You can find most of our leadership. Just go to our webpage.
Thank you, Quenton. April, how can everyone reach you and find out more about EPA's SBIR STTR program?
Absolutely. Same thing. Google EPA SBIR takes you right to our homepage, all the general information there. And I just have to say, we have one solicitation per year. It's going to open next month, and we'll release the topics next week. So if anyone has an environmental technology, check out those topics and see if you can help us with any of those. I am kind of it for EPA. So just email me, richards.april@epa.gov. Happy to bounce ideas. If you think you have a technology that might fit, happy to give you some general advice about whether it's appropriate for solicitation.
Thank you, April. Mina, how can everybody reach you and learn more about SOCOM's program?
All right, so for us, we have a www.socom.mil, and then under doing business, you'll find SOCOM. That website sucks. And it doesn't, the SBIR one, right? Not the entire website, just the SBIR page. It doesn't have anything except some ancillary documents. Now, from another alternative is we have multiple other gateways to SOCOM, something called EngageSoft. It's under doing business under the same website. That's how you can submit some ideas and let our technical POCs see the stuff. Or you can go to softworks.org, softworks, SOFWERX.org. They have an ecosystem. They publish every BAA that I put out, and they put all the documents in one place. They hold all my Q&A, virtual Q&A sessions for any of the topics. And that's a great way of asking questions and finding out things firsthand from the authors of the topics. For me, the email is sbir@socom.mil. That one gets all my team. So if I cannot get to the email, somebody in a team, very, very small team of 3, are able to answer it or get it to my attention. So that has a better attention than my personal email. LinkedIn is a great way of quick chatting and talking. And when you send me a LinkedIn or SBI or SBIR at SOCOM.mil, I can easily send you a Calendly link, and you can just schedule a quick 15 minutes and we can have a further conversation. So opening a lot of these doors. One last thing is SOCOM, our Acquisition Technology and Logistics Acquisition Executive, under our Office of Small Business Programs, also on SOCOM.mil. I'm throwing a lot of information here. They have something called an Acquisition Executive Roundtable, which is every other month. It's free. Any small business can participate, and you can ask any questions, not just for SBIR, STTR, but for SOCOM as a whole. Definitely encourage you going in there. You have a plethora of different SMEs sitting on that table, to include the acquisition executive and a contracting and a small business, et cetera, and myself, EngageSoft, et cetera, that would answer all your questions. So please communicate with us, talk with us. We'd love to hear from you.
Mina, thank you. April, Mina, Quenton, thank you very much for your time. I'm pretty sure your LinkedIn is blowing up right now. I appreciate it all and all the insight and information that you guys have distributed to all of our wonderful attendees today.